Is your story an omniscient POV? Is it third person POV? And does it even matter? I'm Karen Beery with Right Now Editing, where we turn good manuscripts into great books.
And I'm Peg Thomas, multi-award winning author and editor, and we are two editors for 5 minutes.
We're going to continue talking about POV because there's a lot to talk about, which is point of view.
A lot.
We've talked a little bit about what the different POVs are. We talked about when to use third, first, how to transition. And now we're going to talk a little bit about omniscient and third, because there's a lot of confusion about what those are, how to use them, and when it's appropriate.
Omniscient is basically God looking down from on high. An omniscient narrator is a good way to think of it, okay? The omniscient point of view has a narrator, and that narrator is all-knowing, knows what everyone's doing, knows what everyone's thinking, knows what everyone's going to do. They haven't even done it yet, knows all their backstory. And that's the way a lot of our classics were written, because that was the writing style back in a long time ago, since the beginning of time.
But the thing to remember too about the omniscient is, because this is really a narrator, it is very often kind of an unattached narrator. So it's someone who's just telling you what's going on, what they see, what's happening in life. They're
not invested in anything,
Yes.
not emotional about anything. If you go back and read the classics, it's amazing how unemotional they are.
Well, a great example, read Ray Bradbury's Dandelion Wine. And it's just, this is what's happening here. This is what's happening here. This is what's happening here. And they're fun stories that come together. But the narrator isn't passionate about one family. And the narrator isn't excited about what one character is doing. He's just relaying information and letting you see what's happening in this town and with these lives.
Just the facts, ma'am. Nothing but the facts.
Very much. But then you have third person, which can be confusing because when you read omniscient novels, it's written with he said, she said. So there is this distance, because if I'm going to describe what Peg's doing, I'll say, Peg went outside, she walked down the street, she played fetch with her dog.
I'm not very interested.
Not today. But it's me just, the narrator is describing what's happening. So it is written technically in the third person, but it's not a third person perspective.
It's not my perspective, or it's not her perspective. It's that up above looking down on us perspective.
Whereas third person, I might write that Karen went outside. The wind bit at her cheeks and her nose froze instantly. Because I'm writing from the perspective of the character, not from the perspective of a narrator. So it is the same feelings and emotions and experiences of the POV character, even though the technical writing, the he, she, they, them, is the same.
But it's also limited, because when you're in deep third, the character can only know what the character can logically know. They don't know what's going to happen, whereas a narrator does. They don't know what other people are doing or feeling or thinking, which a narrator does. So it's a limited point of view. So if you find yourself writing in deep third and all of a sudden you realize, well, he can't know what the temperature is in the next city over because he's not there and he doesn't have his smartphone and he can't know that, then that has to come out. Whereas with a narrator, that could be in there because the narrator knows all. But that limiting deep third, really, the whole purpose behind it and the change behind it is it makes reading a book more like watching a movie. Mm-hmm. It's to give it more that movie experience. As we moved away from reading as a culture and more into watching, we had to develop ways to create books that were more like the watching experience. And that's really where deep third came from.
The most important thing to remember, the difference between omniscient and third, is the omniscient can have that disconnected narrator who can describe things and do it very disconnectedly. Anytime you're in third person POV, even if you start with description, it is always from that character's perspective. You can only describe what that character knows and understands. You don't ever have a narrator that pops up in a third person manuscript.
If you're reading part of your manuscript and all of a sudden you think, hey, there's another person in this book, which I just dropped on the floor, a book. I'll pick that up in a minute. But if you suddenly, if there's another person, there's another point of view, then you have lost your deep third point of view. Excuse me.
We're not going to talk much more about it because we're out of time. But we both agree, this book by Kathy Tyers, it's Writing Deep Viewpoint. I am not joking when I say that some of her chapters, almost word for word, things that I have told to my clients about how to strengthen their deep point of view. It's a fantastic...
Well worth reading. Get the paperback. You're going to mark it up. You're going to dog ear it. And we're out of time. We got to go.